bitches go.
We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego Unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Yo, Anthony Joshua claims he'll fight in Tijuana, Mexico, and Andy Ruiz claps back in response to Anthony Joshua. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. Now, the new champ, Andy Ruiz, has responded to Joshua. I made a video about that. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you can get plugged in, keep it locked. And I made a video about it. Joshua, he said a variety of things. It didn't really make sense to me. He says the rematch has to take place on neutral territory, but then he advocates the whole, majority of the rest of the interview with Sky Sports in the fight happening in the UK, which really wouldn't be neutral territory. That would clearly favor him, as he says in the interview. He says, yeah, 70 to 90,000 screaming fans, and they all want to see you get your belt back. So, that's pretty much the opposite of neutral. Neutral ground would be somewhere like Canada, where it doesn't really give either guy a significant advantage. So Joshua, his statements, they were basically a walking contradiction. But besides that, he says he'll fight Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz is doing a lot of talking. He says he'll fight Andy Ruiz in Tijuana, Mexico, and his Tio can be, his uncle can be the one to referee the fight, and he'll still whoop him. So, to me, that was weird. It was a bit of an overkill. How are you going to claim to whoop him in Mexico, but you don't want to fight him in Mexico? You don't want to fight him in the U.S., even though you had a vlog where you said you would fight him in the U.S., go back to the crime scene and right your wrongs. But now Eddie Hearn or whoever's been in your ear, and now you want a strategic advantage. So, it's just really looking bad for Joshua because it doesn't look believable. Beyond that, how are you going to say you're going to go fight him in Mexico and quote unquote whoop him, but you didn't whoop him the first time and you only have 5 weeks to prepare? Either way, Andy Ruiz Jr. on his verified Twitter has responded. See, this is the clip. And it says Ruiz's uncle could be the referee and I'd still whoop him. Anthony Joshua was in a buoyant mood as talk of rematch intensifies. And then this is what Ruiz had to say. We gonna clap back. We gonna clap back. We gonna clap back. Make sure you smash the like button. Andy Ruiz Jr. said, AJ says he can, quote, whoop me in Tijuana. Prove it. Let's run it in Mexico. Remember that you did have a huge reason to come to America, and that was to build your profile. Hashtag Ruiz versus the robot. Wow. Part 2. He keep putting this robot. Hey, Eddie Ruiz he's like sneak dissing him something crucial. I just seen that. It said Ruiz versus Robot 2. Hashtag cherry picking gone wrong. And to me, this is a bad Joshua. I don't know who's gassing him up or like who put a battery in the back, but it makes him look bad in the end because he has to contradict what he previously said. He previously said he wants to right his wrong in the crime scene where it all took place. All right. But then now you don't want to fight in America. Now you're saying you'll fight in Mexico, but you were not even willing to fight in America. It doesn't sound believable to me, the stuff that Anthony Joshua is saying. I don't think he even believes what he's saying, because again, if you're willing to fight in a hostile territory like Mexico, which would be totally foreign to you, that'd be like Ruiz fighting you in Nigeria or something. If you're willing to do that, then why won't you fight in America when you said you want to go back to the crime scene? These things don't really make sense, and it should be a good fight, good rematch. I personally think there must be some kind of mutual agreement in the contract where they said they both have to mutually agree on the destination and the location. And I think that's kind of what's taking so long. That's kind of what's taking so long for the negotiations to to be finalized, because you guys got to keep in mind this fight was the rematch was triggered immediately, 2-3 days after the loss. So they knew for a while that they were going. This picture is just ridiculous. They knew for a while that they were going to do the rematch, but I think they're arguing mostly on the location. You see, Eddie Hearn, they know that Joshua's their cash cow, and him to lose again, especially by stoppage or get stopped sooner or anything like that, would be a travesty for Matchroom. So they want to give him, they're probably looking at, Eddie Hearn even said when Joshua said on his vlog that he'll fight and go back to the crime scene and he wants to fight in the US, and Eddie Hearn even rebutted and did videos, and he was like, oh, Joshua is crazy. He still wants to fight in the US, where it all went disastrous. And I think that was the right attitude. This looks sorry from Joshua, that Joshua now wants to, he's acting like he took the loss good and stuff. And he initially stated he wanted to right his wrongs at the crime scene. So for him to now try to flee and go to the UK, it's not a good look. One, Dillian White just failed a drug test and was allowed to fight. And the Dillian White's team, nor anybody else, even instructed or informed Oscar Rivas's team. So there's a lot of questions about the British Board of Control, the UK, of what's being allowed. Also, people like Dillian White have been candid and calling out AJ and saying he's definitely on twos. Gerald Miller said it, and these guys end up getting busted for something of their own. They said they know about that world or whatever, and Joshua, he said he's on some type of twos, and the reason he looked like he did versus Ruiz was because he was not able to get the same type of exemptions that you can get more readily available and easier in the UK, so maybe that's why Joshua didn't want to take $50 million to fight Wilder in America, and why he's insistent on fighting Ruiz. And if Dillian White and Gerald Miller and others, Triple G also said something, if this speculation is true, where he has exemptions for like medicines or whatever that he wouldn't be able to get approved in America, then I can understand another reason. Because, you have to look at it. You're talking about a professional heavyweight fighter who's a gold medalist and has an amateur career. And he's constantly talking about, making it sound like, I got to do it for British fans. And, they deserve to get to see me fight Wilder. They deserve to get the opportunity to see me reclaim my belts, and they want to see it. That it just seems that to me that seems contrived, and that seems forced. Like, so in the middle of the ring, when a 260 plus pound man is punching you in the face, you're thinking about British fans and the crowd, or you just thinking of a strategy to not get knocked out and or to win, So he puts, to me, Joshua's putting way too much emphasis on the crowd, versus you look at guys like Floyd Mayweather. He said he can't fight for you. The crowd can't fight for you. They can't fight for you, because it's part of the game. People like Sergey Kovalev has been a road warrior. He fought some of his greatest fights in people's backyards. Bernard Hopkins, he fought him in Atlantic City, New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, which is not far from Philly, where B-Hop is from. He fought Andre Ward on the West Coast in Nevada at Vegas, and Ward's from Oakland, California, and he fought him there twice. He fought, who was it? He fought Nathan Cleverly in his backyard. He fought Jean Pascal, who just became a champion over the weekend, after the fact, and stopped him twice in Canada. So Kovalev's about that life. Joshua should right his wrongs and fight out of his comfort zone, which would either be the US or in Mexico, period. And then to boot, you can't, people are calling your bluff left, right, and center. Anthony Joshua was just called out by Andy Ruiz. He said, all right, run it. Let's run it in Mexico. Let's do it. Like, what are we talking about? See, that's the thing with the social media age. People say stuff on social media, but they imply things, or they say things up, on social media, but behind the scenes, that's not what's being said. Why are you guys arguing over location if you're down to fight in Tijuana? If you're willing to fight in Mexico, then fighting in the US where you lost everything, shouldn't be a big deal. Or just take it to Mexico. Ruiz is good with either option. So to me, I think there's been a standoff because somehow they probably both have to mutually agree on the spot and push it through. And Andy Ruiz isn't budging that he wants his 2 locations, US or Mexico. And Joshua's team is fighting to try to get in the UK. But Joshua, I can't believe Joshua's team when they constantly change what they've said. You know, Joshua just did a vlog days after the fight on his own YouTube that anybody can go to YouTube, type in Anthony Joshua channel, find it. And he says, my loss and how I lost to Andy Ruiz. You know, he has this whole video explaining and, you know, giving this epilogue. And he literally says, I want to go back to the crime scene where it happened. I want to go back to the crime scene and set this right. So why are you even arguing with Al Heyman and Andy Ruiz's team to bring it to the UK? Why won't you just budge then? If you're on tape, Andy Ruiz ain't on tape saying I want to go to the UK. The only thing I've seen about him in the UK, he said I want 50 million to fight in the UK. You know, but Joshua said, and he even said in this Sky Sports interview, he said, I don't care where we fight. We can fight Tijuana with his Tio. You know, he said, it don't matter. I don't mind fighting in America. I already went there. And then the last thing is Anthony Joshua is making it look like he did Andy Ruiz of some huge, you know, solid, like some huge favor. Let's not forget, Joshua was not coming out to America on behalf of Andy Ruiz. That was all a shoo-in. That was all a last minute change because the initial person that you tried to cherry pick, Gerald Big Baby Miller, who didn't have the experience like a Deontay Wilder at the pro level, you try to pick him and then he ultimately failed a drug test and it left you needing an opponent with, you know, little time to fix it. So don't, you know, you making it sound like he gave Andy Ruiz this opportunity and came to America exclusively for him. You were already coming to America and it wasn't for Andy Ruiz. It was for Gerald Miller. Again, the only reason this did not transpire and take place was because Gerald Miller failed a drug test, multiple drug tests with multiple drugs. So we can't forget that. This picture is really weird. Joshua's making it sound like, hey, I did you a solid. Now do me a solid and come fight in the UK. But you didn't. Your plans were foiled by Gerald Miller. You didn't just come. The initial plan was not to come fight Andy Ruiz in America. So you're like, oh, I gave you an opportunity. You were already booked for America. That changes things. You know, that changes things. It's like somebody stopping by your house, like with, you know, oh, I just stopped in because I'm in the neighborhood because they're trying to go to someone else's house and that person wasn't home. So then they come to visit you. You know, you didn't drive all this way to visit me initially. You drove all this way to visit someone else. But since I live in the nearby area and your initial option is not available, then now you come to me. Or like a prom date. It's like someone having a prom date and their real first choice prom date they think they're going to go with, and then the person ends up flaking on them last minute. And as a result, then they say, hey, Johnny, you want to go to the prom with me? Hey, Cindy Lou, you want to go to the prom with me? But you're only doing this after your first option backed out or flaked. You get what I'm saying? So those things matter. I wasn't your first choice for prom. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think there's a battle behind the scenes of location. I think that's what's really going on. They can't agree on it because Eddie Hearn basically knows, Barry Hearn, Matchroom, they know if Joshua loses, there's going to be some David Price shit. It's going to be hard if he loses bad or gets knocked out, it's going to be very hard to build Joshua back, you know, in any reasonable amount of time to what he was perceived as when he was undefeated and people wanted to see him fight Wilder. You know, people aren't going to care about if Joshua gets knocked out again, no one cares about Wilder versus Joshua at all. So all the chips are in. Everything is contingent on how Joshua looks, and he really has to win. He even said that in the interview with Sky Sports. He's like, "Oh, the thing is, right? I gotta win." Yeah, he does have to win. So they just want any strategic advantage. And for me, if I'm Andy Ruiz, I'm not fighting in the UK. Too much fishy shit going on with the Dillian White situation. He was cleared. Nobody knew because it was confidential. So you don't have to tell the opposing party. When Joseph Parker fought AJ in the unification, they used an inexperienced ref who didn't allow Joseph Parker, the shorter fighter, to fight on the inside. You know, we've seen Gabe Rosado, Martin Murray. We've seen bullshit decisions in the UK, premature stoppage, biased commentary. Andy Ruiz, he's the champ. So I would call the shots. You know, unless there's something in the contract that stipulates it has to be at this location. You know, that's the only way they would, if I'm Andy Ruiz's team, that's the only way they would hold me to something, is if they cover their tracks and they had it explicitly written out that I have to follow this rule. Like the rematch clause itself. That's one of the things that, without a shadow of a doubt, we knew that was written into the contract, that Joshua had options on a rematch. So something like that, cool. I would follow that. You know, I got to fight him. But if they don't have it specifically spelled out, then I wouldn't listen to anything they're talking about, especially giving him the advantage. Like Joshua, it's like Joshua's almost babied. It's like they try to baby Joshua. You know, they're saying stuff like, "Oh, I gave you an opportunity." You know, okay, you gave him an opportunity. It wasn't supposed to be him originally, and he capitalized. End of story. That's life. So now you want get back. You did have insurance as far as, you know, staking your claim for a rematch, but it's like Joshua wants brownie points, or he wants a cookie for, "Oh, I came to America." I mean, you're a fighter. You come to one of the meccas of boxing, probably the most lucrative place you could fight in boxing. Hence why Canelo left Mexico and he fights primarily in the States. Pacquiao left the Philippines, fights primarily. Kovalev fights primarily, you know, a lot of his big fights. His yard fight's going to be in Russia, but a lot of his other big fights happen in the States. You know what I'm saying? This is just regular shit. Joshua is like, he wants extra credit. He wants people to, you know, baby him and treat him a certain way because he gave Andy Ruiz a shot. You had to fight somebody, and then your team had to find a replacement to a guy that failed a drug test. You don't get extra points for shit you supposed to do. Remember that Chris Rock joint? He said, "Niggas brag about shit they supposed to do." He like, "Yeah, but man, I take care of my kids." He said, "Nigga, you supposed to take care of your kids." Like, how you gonna brag about something you got to fight somebody? It was supposed to be Gerald Miller, and then that couldn't go on for obvious reasons because this is not the UK. So out here, if you fail a drug test, the fight's probably gonna get canceled, you know. And you selected Andy Ruiz, and he beat you fair and square. So it's like, why should we have all this sympathy? "Oh, I gave you a chance," and you know, it's not like he just went out of his way and did something for Andy Ruiz. He really didn't. You needed an opponent. Andy Ruiz is available, and the fight got made. Period. But it wasn't like you went out of your way to make sure Andy Ruiz got a shot against you, you know, that he didn't have to. You know, so we'll see how it all plays out. But Joshua has too many contradictions, so I don't believe what he's saying. You know, we'll fight you in Mexico. I don't believe that, because you wouldn't be arguing about fighting in the States, but want to fight somewhere where you're clearly the visitor and you're clearly going to have a psychological disadvantage. And then beyond that, Joshua looks spooked being in Madison Square Garden. So this further proves, at least to me, maybe not to you guys, but to me personally, this proves there's some more truth to why Joshua's dad was angry with Eddie Hearn, and the panic attack stories and the Joey Daweko stories, Daweko. You know, these stories, something is up. Whether they admit it, they'll probably never admit it, whatever. But to me, something is up because Joshua looks spooked. And another reason why he should fight in America is because if I'm lying and that's not the case, and it's not like he has to just prove it to me. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that feel like me. The other thing is Anthony Joshua, he owes it to the fans of boxing. He keeps talking about British fans. The British fans are great, but they're not the only fans in the world. This is a boxing event. This is a massive fight now because of how the first one played out. So I think he owes it to boxing fans to set this right and prove if you could beat Andy Ruiz. Don't take a backdoor out and, switch locations and stuff like that. Joshua looked spooked. He looked terrified. He looked petrified. He looked caught off guard. He was playing with his gum shield and looking around and getting a massage and stuff like that. So whatever that was that they're not admitting, whatever caused that, they said he was regular. He never, every time he walked out with the UK and they had fireworks and shit, he never looked like that. He looked like he had butterflies. He was nervous, whatever. So another reason why I want to see him fight outside of his comfort zone is because to ultimately bury that hatchet and prove it to yourself, you got to get over whatever that was. And I can't say what it was. I can say what I speculate, but they won't admit that he had a panic attack. So I think he had a panic attack or something was up. He was having reservations about going out there because the eyes never lie. The eyes don't lie. And he just looked spaced out. So I want to see if Joshua, as a true champion, can bounce back and clean that up, whatever that was that he's not admitting. I want to see you running to the UK doesn't prove that for me. If you go back to the UK, that's your comfort zone. You got to show that you can conquer your fears. It's just like a dad, and then he's awakened in the middle of the night because his son comes in the room. Dad, there's a monster in my closet. And then the dad is like, no, there's not a monster. Go back to bed. And he's like, no, I swear. So then dad puts his slippers on, puts his robe on, and then he walks in the room with the flashlight. And then he goes with you. You don't get to just sit in the bed. You got to go with your dad to the closet, and he shines. Look. And he looks in the closet. Look, there's no monster in here. You need to go back to bed. I just proved it to you. It was a bad dream, blah, blah, blah. That's how you conquer your fear. You don't conquer your fear by your dad checking on it while you hide under the blanket. You feel what I'm saying? So Joshua, again, he's not admitting that anything was wrong, but the perception is definitely that he was weirded out or, something was good. Something was going on regarding why he was looking all like antsy and, caught off guard and just spaced out, looking all beady-eyed and stuff. So I need to see him as a true champion at the heavyweight division. I need to see him be able to tackle that type of pressure. Get those jitters out of your system, beat Ruiz proper, and move on with your career. Fighting in the UK, a win's a win, but that doesn't erase that pain. That doesn't erase that you didn't all the way prove to yourself that you can do it. If you're not willing to, like he said, go back to the crime scene. So that's my take on it. Andy Ruiz called his bluff. He said, yo, all right, let's fight in Mexico. So when people do stuff like that, it's a bad look because now he called your bluff and said, let's fight in Mexico. So if the fight don't happen in the US or in Mexico, then we know Joshua was bluffing. So Joshua, I don't think he thinks before he does these interviews about this type of stuff. That makes you look bad. You sitting up here talking about you'll fight him in Tijuana, but through the rest of the interview, you're outspoken and candid about you now want it in the UK. Even though you said initially, days later, you want to go back to the crime scene, and your own promoter said you were crazy for even wanting it in America because the whole America trip was so disastrous. So to me, I think Joshua has to conquer his fear. Fighting in the UK is almost a cop-out. Plus you got to look at the logistics for DAZN or whoever network this is going to be on. There's not just British fans. So, I'm not trying to shit on the British fans, but it's going to be an inconvenient time in America. Andy Ruiz, we want big fights and big boxing events and stuff like that. So putting in the UK is not ideal except for to that region. that time zone is not ideal primetime TV to get maximum watch time for a fight involving a Mexican American fighter too. This is not just a British fight. This is not like some of the bullshit, matchroom fight cards, David Price versus CashApp Ali or whoever. It's not a fight like that. This is a global fight now. Mexico's involved, the US is involved, and Great Britain's involved. So there's a lot of areas where there's a definite interest in the fight taking place, and it's not in accordance with just UK time. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who want to see this fight. It's not just about, what's prime time for the UK. And again, you don't get additional brownie points or whatever for, you don't get brownie points for you did it the first time in America, because like in Mexico City, it's about 2 hours ahead of me, I believe. It's 4 o'clock right now for me. So Mexico City is probably like 6 p.m. for them. So if it happens in the US, it'll be more of a reasonable time for a lot of different people, not just the UK. I understand it's an inconvenience. The UK would have to stay up till 3 a.m., 4 a.m., but they have to do that often for Mayweather fight, Pacquiao, Thurman, etc. So I just think it's weak if Joshua doesn't fight out of his comfort zone, because that's part of the challenge. That's part of what I would like to see, if he can conquer those fears. Fighting where you're comfortable at is like, I guess just a strategic advantage, but it doesn't prove as much as being able to fight. He even said, just listen to the interview. He's all over the place. He's saying I'll fight anywhere, but then he's pushing, but then he says I'm pushing for the UK to have the crowd advantage. But then he said it was a neutral. We got to fight somewhere neutral. How's it neutral when you say you'll have the crowd advantage in the UK and you're clearly pushing for that? It's just all over the place. Check it out. Let me know what you guys think. We working. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.